Okay, so hi everyone. I'm so happy to have all of you here again. Big wave from wherever you are all across the world, which is so cool. I'm really enjoying these Zoom chats. They're really fun. It's fun to see everyone, especially right now when we have no shows and we can't travel anywhere. So we're all stuck at home. And this is just kind of a fun way to see some faces and talk about horses, which we all love doing. So this discussion on fear and rider mindset is a really hard one, but it's also a really important one. And I'm not a psychologist. I don't feel like I'm very good at like dealing with fear. And so I've done a lot of research this week to try and bring you guys something useful that can help you to overcome your fear. One thing that I noticed is when you look up fear, like if you Google it and look it up on the website, you see a lot of things that have to do with like, okay, fear of heights or fear of flying or fear of speaking. And that's great. But all those things you kind of feel like, well, you're probably not going to get hurt. Like you're not going to get hurt standing at top of the cliff, or you're not going to get hurt speaking in front of a huge group of people. But with horses, there's a good chance that physically you can get really hurt. And that makes it really hard to deal with this kind of fear. The other thing that makes our specific type of fear with horses different is that horses are fearful. So if you're like afraid of flying, the plane isn't afraid of flying. But with horses, the horses feel our fear and then they feed off of that. So it becomes this loop where we're afraid, the horse gets afraid, we're afraid, the horse gets afraid. So it just spirals worse and worse. So for those reasons, this type of fear is a lot different. And you kind of have to address like the fear of the rider separate from the fear of the horse. So fear is kind of the first part of this seminar. And then I wanted to go a little more into just mindset and how to get yourself in a good mindset for your daily training and how to bring like your best self into your rides every day, because that is so important. Your mindset is everything. And then at the end of the discussion, I wanted to leave you guys with like a little guided visualization. And that's just kind of a way to get yourself into a good mindset before you get on your horse. It's going to be different for everyone, but it's just going to give you guys some ideas of things that you can do. So let me share with you guys my screen. And I have a few slides to show you. So let me pull that up here. I can do this. Okay, can you all see my slides now? Good. All right, so dressage rider mindset. So on the bottom here, you see everything begins inside your mind. With the right mindset, you will succeed. And that's so true, is like what you're thinking is going to happen. So if you are thinking at the beginning of your ride, I'm going to have a good ride, it's going to be positive, I'm going to be brave and confident, and we're going to do this, you're going to have a good ride. If you put your foot in the stirrup and you're like, I don't know, I'm really not feeling good about this today, I hope things go okay, it's not going to be as good of a ride. So that's really important to consider, and that's why we're having this discussion today. I wanted to remind you all about Patreon. So if you missed last week's discussion on rider straightness, I posted that there. I will also post the recording from today's session on Patreon. And then also I'm going to add like a resource guide with a bunch more videos that you guys can watch to help with fear. Patreon is a membership site, so you can sponsor like $5 a month or whatever you feel like to help support these seminars and help me pay for, like I have to pay Zoom a certain amount a month for this platform. So thank you all for supporting me there. Okay, so we're just gonna start off with, and I want you guys to use the comment section, and I want you to comment and tell me what you are afraid of. And I don't want anyone to be sitting there and thinking, well, I'm not afraid, because we all have fear. And fear is something that keeps us safe. So fear is something that when you're walking alone at night, you have that little sense of fear that you're aware of your surroundings. Fear is something that keeps us from jumping off of a huge cliff. So we all have it. So yeah, Marianne says, I'm afraid of death. Joellen says, I'm afraid of falling off, getting hurt, and losing my ride time. Horse runs off with me. Let's see. I'm afraid of losing control. I'm afraid of the horse bolting. Fear of getting hurt. Yes, death. Getting bucked off. Getting hurt. So you can see that there's a ton of different reasons that we're afraid. We all have that. It's important to recognize it. I'm afraid of getting hurt. You know, my job relies on my body. If I get hurt and end up in the hospital, I can't pay my bills. So that's a real fear and something that changes my behaviors. Okay. So where do you feel your fear? This is a really interesting one, and I want you guys to think about when you feel your fear, like where is it? Is it in your stomach? Is it in your breath? Is it in your throat? Is it in your shoulders? Like just kind of take a minute and feel in your body where that fear comes in. So yeah, Ava says my stomach, Dottie says my back, my shoulders, it takes my breath away. Increased heart rate and breathing, Olson says, upper body, literally all the above, heart pounding. Yeah, so these are all signs of fear. Everyone, you know, has a different reaction to their fear, but it's important to understand what fear feels like before you can start to control it and organize it. So like for me, I definitely feel it in my shoulders. I tense up. I feel it like when I get fearful, I want to kind of curl up into fetal position and lock up everywhere. So it's important to first feel that fear. Now this is where things get kind of interesting. So I want you to try and remove yourself from your fear. So like try to take yourself out of your body and then look at yourself in your fearful state. And by doing this, you kind of start to recognize those patterns in yourself. And then what this allows you to do is it allows you to release the fear. So by being outside yourself and looking at yourself, you can start to release the fear. So you're releasing that feeling in the pit of your stomach. You're breathing. You're trying to slow your heart rate down. You're trying to release that tension that I get in my shoulders. And then what you want to feel is like, what emotion can you replace your fear with? So comment in the description, because I want you guys to think about that. Like you have to replace your fear with something else. So Marian says joy. Ava says excitement, confidence and positivity, excitement about riding and learning, purpose, confidence, relaxation. So all those are great ideas. And it's like when you start to feel yourself get fearful, one of the most important, I think, with a horse is confidence, taking charge of the situation, saying, you know what, I'm in charge and I'm going to control this and let's do this together. And that's also going to help your horse, that your horse can trust you and that they can release their fear. Okay, so thank you guys for commenting on that. Now we are going to your horse's fear. So this is, like I said, it's complicated because you're not only dealing with your fear, you're dealing also with your horse's fear. And horses are prey animals. They're very inclined to be fearful because they need to protect themselves. So like the lions and the, you know, whatever might jump out of the bush, it could eat them. Like they have a real reason to be afraid. So you can see this little diagram on the left. So the rider fear in the rider contributes to the horse. Fear in the horse can contribute to the rider fear. So if you have a horse and a rider that are both afraid, it's like bad. It's a very bad situation. On the right there, that's a photo of my horse Harvey. And in my hand, I'm holding a flag. And Harvey is really afraid of the flag. So let's talk about this. What scares your horse? And comment, let me know, because different things scare different horses. Some horses are afraid of noises. Some horses are afraid of sight. Some horses are afraid of trucks. So let's see, what are people saying? Chicken, someone says their horse is afraid of chicken. We have peacocks at one of my barns and our horse does not like the peacocks. Noises, cows, loud trucks. My tension scares him. Yes, thank you for contributing that. The wild turkeys, tractors, groundhogs, wind, cat jumping from the bushes. Okay, so the list is endless about what can scare your horse. And as you learn horses, it's different with every horse. Like some horses are afraid of things that other horses aren't at all afraid of. So it's important that you know what scares your horse, because your job is to keep your horse safe and that your horse can trust you. And it's not about like never exposing your horse, but you don't want to overexpose them. So you want to manage your horse's fear. Okay, how does your horse react to fear? Again, this is different in every horse, okay? So like in the photo, you can see Harvey, his head is up, his muscles are rigid. He's probably snorting because that's what he does. So let me see. Bolt and buck, run away. My horse turns fast. Giraffe then stops dead and runs sideways. Spin and shy, run 100 miles an hour. Stops, spins, and does airs above the ground. So every horse has a different reaction to the fear. And again, it's important to know what your horse's reaction is so that then you can come up with a plan to help your horse's reaction. Okay, what is next here? How does your horse's fear manifest in your body? So this is a really interesting one to think about. When you feel your horse tense and get afraid, what happens to your body when you're on top of the horse? So I tense up, I get fetal. Yes, a lot of people do this where fetal position is basically leaning forward and pulling and collapsing your body. My heart beats erratically, grip with the legs, tension and curl up. Oh, someone says, I'm pretty good. I relax because this is where I need him to relax. It's weird. So that's great. So it's important to feel like when your horse gets afraid, what's your natural tendency? And then how can you work on getting yourself to relax to help your horse to relax? So we all do that when we feel our horse get fearful. Our first instinct is to get fearful, and we have to change that, where when we feel our horse tense up, we start to relax. I don't know what all these yellow lines are on my slide. I think I've accidentally drew those in, and I don't know how to get rid of them. Sorry. Okay, so this is a little flow chart that I made up for you guys, specifically about riding. So let's talk about the incident. So the incident is that moment where you feel your horse get fearful and then things go badly. It's those 8 seconds that you replay over and over and over in your mind, right? So you feel your horse get tense and then they buck you off, or your horse spins around and bolts and you fall off. It's that, like, those 8 seconds that in your mind are just going around and around and around and you can't stop them. We all have an incident like that. So comment and let me know, maybe you guys have an incident that we can talk about later. Let's see. No one's commented about their incident yet. That's fine though. So what happens from the incident is a few things, and this is where it gets really complicated, because as a result of the incident, sometimes the horse gets afraid. So let's say that, like, you're riding on the trail and suddenly a bird jumps out and now your horse is afraid of birds. Now, it can also cause just rider fear. So there's certain instances where, like, let's say that you're riding an old, like, lazy school horse and you smack it with a whip and it bucks you off. That's more of an incident that would cause fear in the rider, but probably not in the horse. Like, and with an older, more confirmed horse, it may be that you're the only one that's gotten fearful from the situation, and the horse, like, really doesn't care. Now, the most common and the most difficult is the third on the right, which is both the horse and the rider are fearful. This is the most common because whatever the incident is, both the horse and the rider are now fearful of that. So, like, let's say you try to canter your horse for the first time, which is a lot of times where things go badly, and your horse bolts and you fall off. Now we have two problems. One is that the rider's afraid of cantering, and two is that the horse is now afraid to canter because the rider fell off and they lost their security blanket. So the situation on the right is the most difficult and also the most common. So it's important to consider what the trigger is for the incident. So if you look at the top of this diagram, we see the trigger. And a lot of people say, oh, well, I don't know, everything was going along great, and then suddenly my horse just blew up and bucked me off. That's really very, very uncommon. I would say 99.9% of the time there is always a trigger, and it's your job as the horseman to try and figure it out. So, you know, what caused this situation? Was it that your horse was fresh? Was it that they were lazy and all of a sudden you whipped them and they woke up and bucked you off? The triggers, it can also be more complicated than that, because triggers can come from incidents that your horse have had in the past that you don't always know about. Like, I had one of my viewers wrote in a comment to me this week, and they said their horse has a scar on their tongue from racing. So clearly that horse has some baggage from before she got it that could be a trigger that may cause an incident. Same thing with us as people. We may bring baggage from previous horse accidents. You may also have trauma from another incident in your life. Maybe you were in an auto accident. Maybe you were in an abusive relationship. So there's triggers that are more complex and subtle. I've had clients that had cancer and it really triggered them to have a lot of fear. And it's really important to consider maybe these deeper issues or more obscure triggers. Sometimes it's really obvious, right? It's like the bird jumped up on the fence, my horse spun around, I fell off. That's a really obvious trigger. Sometimes they're more complicated. So now we have to break things down. And this is where it gets really tricky. But basically, if your horse is afraid of something, you have to try to break it down in such a way that you can build up their confidence and get them to accept whatever it is that they're fearful of. Same thing with the rider. So like with the rider, let's say that you're afraid of cantering. First, you need to get used to trotting faster. Then you need to maybe have someone lunge you on the lunge line and work on cantering in a controlled situation on a school horse. So it's really important to break things down into little bite-sized pieces and then build it up. Now, this third situation, if both the horse and rider are fearful, you may need to separate the horse and rider and work on them one at a time. So what I mean by this is if you're a timid, afraid rider and your horse is timid and afraid, that's when you need to seek help. So you need to get a professional to help you with your horse. And then at the same time, you need to work on yourself to get over your fear, because that is not a good situation if you're both afraid. There are ways to work through it, but that's where I feel like you really need to reach out and get someone to help you. Okay, and it's really important to avoid recurrence of the incident. The more that something happens over and over, the more you get bucked off, the more your horse runs away with you, the worse it is. So you have to break it down and try to figure out what the trigger is and then how to kind of desensitize your horse to that trigger. Okay, I don't think trigger. Okay, there's not too many comments. I will try to answer more comments later. Okay, so cognitive behavioral therapy. This is like a very kind of generic way of helping us as humans deal with our fear. So basically what happens is that our thoughts lead to feelings. The feelings generate a behavior, and then the behavior intensifies through our thoughts. So basically it's like, let's say that you're afraid of cantering. So your thoughts about cantering cause fear, and then this feeling of fear generates behaviors, which we talked about, right? Like that feeling in the pit of your stomach, your heart racing. And when you start to have these physical behaviors, it creates even more thoughts about being afraid of cantering. And then the thoughts lead to even more feelings. So it's just this downward cycle that we all get ourselves into, where you just work yourself up over and over again about this fear that you're having. I talked this week to a lady that is a psychologist, and she specializes in working with riders that have fear. And so if you have like real fear and real trauma, if you've really gotten hurt, you should probably reach out to a specialist, and they do things like EMDR therapy, one-on-one sessions that can help you to get over your fear. I'm not a professional, but her website is there. It's rosamundtherapy.com. And again, I will post this on Patreon, but she's a great resource. And if you are really having like serious trauma, you should try to reach out to her or someone and get help. Okay, let's talk about breathing. So breathing is one of the best ways to help you relax and help your horse relax. I don't know how many of you guys have noticed that when you hold your breath, your horse holds their breath. So this 4 square breathing technique is a really great technique that you can use when you're riding. So basically what you're gonna do, it's easiest to do it at the walk, but I like to use the rhythm of my horse's gait. So either the walk or the trot or the canter to help with my breathing. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna breathe in for 4 seconds, but usually I breathe in for 4 steps because that's, you're on the horse, so you have that motion. So you're gonna breathe in for 4 walk steps. You're gonna hold for 4 walk steps. Then you're gonna exhale for 4 walk steps. And then you're gonna wait for 4 walk steps. So this is just a good way to kind of help you relax. You'll also find that it really helps your horse relax. Sometimes when you take a deep breath, you'll find that your horse takes a deep breath. Horses are really amazing how in tune they are with you and with your fear. Sometimes the horse will be aware of your tension even before you are. So this is a great breathing technique. I also sometimes, so like when you're trotting, it's hard to hold your breath for 4 seconds and breathe out. So sometimes when I'm trotting or cantering, I'll kind of let the motion of the horse bounce my diaphragm. So I'll like breathe a little in, like in, out, 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 out. So I'll kind of let that bounce of the horse's gait help me with my breathing. Oh yeah, Janice says 4 square breathing is the bomb. It's also amazing for sleep if you're an insomniac. And it might also be something that's good for you to do before you get on, is just practice this little breathing technique to help get yourself in the right mindset before you get on your horse. Sitting or posting. Okay, good question. So that breathing, you can do it either in sitting or posting trot. I do it all the time where I kind of feel like my diaphragm, either in posting or sitting, is bouncing in for a few bounces and then out for a few bounces. It helps get my body in the rhythm, and it also really helps me remember to breathe. Diane says, I was told to incorporate breathing with part of the test. Enter at A, breathe. Halt at X, breathe. Turn left at C, breathe, etc. So that's great too, is just keep anything you can do to remind yourself to breathe is going to really help. Okay, so let's talk about safety exercises and your toolbox. Oh, so that little picture there is my new horse, Kensington. He just came here from Europe. He's 5 and he's awesome. I'm really excited about him, but he's young. And so I'm always trying to set things up so that we have good experiences together. But I also want to expose him to everything and continue to build his confidence so that when we go to our first show, that he's with me and together with me. Okay, confidence and boundaries. You are the leader. So that's so important. And, you know, you need to really get that in your mind. Whenever you're with your horse, it's like, I'm the boss. I'm the leader. You guys are all, I know a lot of you, and you guys are so nice and so sweet. And that's a wonderful quality. And I'm not saying that you need to be mean to your horse, because that's not it at all. But you need to be in charge. Like, you need to be the mother figure that everyone loves, because you are just telling them exactly what to do, exactly what the rules are. You're letting your horse have their spirit and not crushing them, but you're the leader, and there's boundaries. And if they cross the boundaries, they need to know about it. And in the end, it's going to make your horse happier. It really is. Groundwork and lunging. So I'm going to put some links to videos on Patreon for you guys, but if I feel worried about getting on a horse, I do a lot of groundwork and lunging. So you saw the photo of Harvey working him with desensitizing him with a flag, teaching your horse to bend on the ground, teaching your horse to drop their head on the ground. Basically, you can teach your horse everything on the ground that they need to know under saddle. So you can work through a lot of getting your horse to submit to you, getting your horse to relax. Lunging is, I think, important that you do it in the right way. I've seen a lot of people that just like race their horse around 100 miles an hour and get the horse so worked up with so much adrenaline that it's almost worse. So when you lunge your horse, it has to be in a way that is getting your horse in a good frame of mind to work. So they need to be like forward and round, but listening and reactive to you, not just hysterically running around. Lunging and groundwork is such a good tool if you're afraid of getting on and if your horse is afraid too. The one rein stop. So maybe you guys can comment, let me know if you've used this technique. But what a one rein stop is basically disengaging the hindquarters and teaching your horse to bend and turn. This is really important because with horses, you can never use the word no or just stop. That doesn't work with them. Horses are flight animals. So if you tell them no, yeah, someone says, I didn't learn about a wandering stop until after the first two runoffs. Lunging with a lot of attentive transitions made the difference for my hot mare. Thank you, Janice. Okay, so wandering stop, you can't tell your horse no or just stop and stand still because they're flight animals and they want to run away. So the one range stop and also drifting the hindquarters, which I have a whole video on my YouTube channel on drifting the hindquarters, is a way to kind of like put your car in neutral. Like the engine can be revving and the RPMs are going, but you're controlling it. If you can bend and turn your horse, you can keep your horse going forward and control them. So basically in a one rein stop, what you do, you slide down one rein, you take that rein and bring your hand towards your belly button. And what you want your horse to do is bend their neck around. They're going to engage their inside hind leg. So their inside hind leg is going to step forward and through. And then eventually they're going to come to a stop because you're turning them onto a smaller circle. A few things about the one rein stop, you have to practice it. So you can't wait until you need it to work on it. Because what happens is if your horse is really stiff and you never bend them and you go to do a one rein stop, they can fall over, which is like really, really dangerous. So it's important that you teach your horse the one rein stop. I usually always teach them from the ground first with a halter and just teaching them to bend their neck and yield their hindquarters so that you have that tool in your toolbox for when you need it. Okay. Another great safety exercise is shoulder in and shoulder for. This would be for a little bit more of an advanced horse. When you're in a dressage test and your horse is afraid of something, you have to go past it anyways. So like, let's say your horse is afraid of the judge's box. When you're competing in dressage, you need a tool that can allow you to kind of channel your horse's energy past the spooky object. So in a shoulder in or a shoulder for, you're going to have your horse off of your inside leg and into your outside rein. You're going to have inside bend. So you're kind of telling your horse, hey, don't look at the scary thing. Look to the inside of the arena and stay off of my inside leg. That's going to give your horse two things. It's going to give your horse direction and confidence. So you're not just saying to your horse, hey, don't be afraid of the judge's booth. You're saying, hey, look at the inside of the arena, stay off my inside leg, let's ride forward past it. And that's really important. Like I said, you can't just say to your horse, no, don't be afraid, don't run off, don't buck. That's not going to work. You have to give them an alternative, like, hey, bend, get off my inside leg, turn, yield. Okay. I try to work in, Susan says, I try to work in shoulder for all the time. Everything is better. Yes, it's definitely better. Okay, rhythm and repetition. So some of you guys were on my training scale discussion. If you remember the dressage training scale, which is that nice triangle that we have, the bottom of the training scale is rhythm. And then the second rung is suppleness, which has to do with relaxation. There's a big correlation between rhythm and relaxation, both for horses and for humans. There are some techniques where they work on people to help them relax using rhythm, like drum beats or anything like that. It actually helps, like the stem of your brain helps you to relax. And the same thing with the horses. If you can just get them in that steady rhythm, that's going to help the horse to relax. So that's a great tool, is to just focus on the rhythm like a metronome of the walk or the trot or the canter for yourself and your horse will help you guys relax. Okay, break it down and take baby steps. This is a huge one. Often I think that we do too much too fast and we end up overexposing ourselves and our horses. So with Kensington, my new horse, I'm really trying to every day just add a little bit more. I'm not all of a sudden one day saying like, okay, today we're going to go on a trail ride. I'm going to really try to get his confidence and his relaxation first on the ground. So every day, even though I've had him for a little while now, I do a little groundwork, and it may be just 2 minutes and it's hot and he's relaxed, ready to get on. It may be a little longer if he's had a few days off and it's cold and he's frisky. But I'd always rather take little tiny baby steps than do too much where I have a bad experience with myself and with him. And then I have to start all over from like even worse than ground zero. So that's really important. If you're having an issue, try to think about how small of steps you can make it. And every day you're just getting 1 or 2% better rather than trying to do it all at once and you have a repeat of the incident. We don't want any repeats. Okay, forward is your friend. I want you guys all to remember this mantra. Horses are flight animals. So if you can find a way to allow them to go forward, they're going to feel safer, even though we as riders don't. When I've started a lot of young horses, and it's the worst when you're just creeping around at the walk and you're like afraid to ask the horse to go forward, because that's when they're going to blow up and run off or buck you off. When you've got your young horse and you're cantering them forward, that's when I feel the safest, because the energy is going somewhere and I kind of know what I have and I'm trying to channel it. So think about that. Like if you're feeling afraid and your horse is feeling afraid, the more that you can let the energy go a little forward and then channel it, the better. And then professionals. So I'm a professional, and it's really important if you are feeling like overfaced, if you are having a lot of trouble with your own fear and also with your horse, that you need to get help. And there's nothing wrong with asking for help. It's not like you are giving up or quitting, but it can be really useful to get someone else to ride your horse for you, even if it's just a few times. So when this might be really helpful is if both the horse and you are afraid, like I talked about. So let's say you had a bad problem cantering your horse and your horse ran off and you fell off, and now you're afraid of cantering and so is your horse. That's a really important situation where you may need to send your horse to someone that's confident and that can work with getting your horse confident with cantering. And then you need to try to find an older school horse that you can work on getting yourself confident with cantering, and then try to put those two back together. That's just so important. And the more bad experiences that you and your horse have together, the harder it is to overcome. So like I said, you know, that the incident box, you want to really try not to let that happen over and over again. Okay. And the little voice in your head. So we all have this little voice in our head that sometimes we ignore. And usually when you ignore that little voice in your head, things don't go well. So I've had this happen where I was riding a horse and he was like really tight in his back. And, you know, the little voice in my head was kind of like, maybe you should get off and lunge. And I was like, no, I don't need to get off and lunge. Like, I'm young and macho. And the horse bucked me off and I ended up getting really hurt. So it's important that if you have that little voice in your head that you listen to it and, you know, get off, don't give up. Like, don't just be like, oh, well, I give up, but maybe get off and do some groundwork, or have your trainer get on, or try to recognize it. Now, this being said, it's also important, like I said, there's a balance. And if you're just fixating on like, oh my God, my horse ran off and bolted with me once, and if you have that incident image like racing over and over in your mind, that's different than the little voice in your head. So you have to kind of try to find a little difference between those two things, but it is important to listen to that little voice. We all have fear for a reason, because it's what keeps us safe. So don't ignore that. Oh yeah, and so again, I have a bunch of videos on all of this, so I'm going to try and put that all together so you guys can go back and watch me explain some more of the techniques, like the drifting of the hindquarters and lunging and stuff like that, that will help you with your toolbox to deal with your horse. Okay, the comfort zone. We all love the comfort zone. And like, to be entirely honest with you guys, giving this talk to you guys is totally out of my comfort zone, because I feel like not that qualified to talk about fear. But if you look at it, the stretch zone is where you get your peak performance. So when you're riding, right, it's so nice to just stay, you know, nice and slow and relaxed, and never go anywhere. The stretch zone is where you're learning, and that's where your peak performance is for you and your horse. So it's taking those little baby steps outside your comfort zone. When I start my ride, I always try to start in my comfort zone. So I start with what I and my horse are confident with, what we're really confirmed in, so that I always first start in my comfort zone. And yes, you can see it may be a little boring, but that's what I start with. Then I try to go a little bit into the stretch zone. So like with my young horse Kensington, every day I might introduce something a little more, like, okay, today we're going to work on leg yields, or today we're going to ride from the barn to the arena instead of me leading him from the barn to the arena. So little baby steps into the stretch zone. Now, you want to be really careful of the panic zone, and especially because you're dealing with horses. So this diagram applies to you, but it also applies to your horse. The panic zone is where your horse freaks out, and you do not want to be in this panic zone. I need to figure out how to mute that person. Okay, so let me, 1 second, sorry. Okay, sorry, I had to mute her. Okay, so the panic zone is not a good place to be in, because the panic zone is where your horse panics and you panic. Sometimes we accidentally get into the panic zone, and that's where things go badly. So that's where you use your tools, like your one rein stop, your drifting the hindquarters, your breathing techniques, all that stuff to get you back into the comfort zone. So that's a really important graph to keep in mind. When you're riding and training, you've got to stretch yourself. You've got to work a little bit every day to get out of your comfort zone, but don't do it all at once and end up in the panic zone, because that's not good for your confidence or for your horse's confidence. Okay. I have a few more slides. Okay, mindset and attitude. So the graph there on the right, which is a very jagged graph, that's how riding is. Like the red line, I'm talking about the red line here, not the green line. We all wish that our riding career was like the green line, that it was like every day us and our horse got a little better. In reality, riding and training horses is like the red line. There's a lot of ups and downs. One day you're gonna feel like, I have the best horse and I'm such a good rider. And the next day it might be like all terrible and horrible, and you feel like you should just quit and give up and never ride, and you're never going to get it. We all feel that way. Even I feel that way as a professional. So as long as the trend is slightly positive, and it probably won't be as positive as that green line, because dressage is such a slow sport. Sometimes it'll like be like you're barely making progress. But as long as the line is somewhat positive, you're on the right track. You're doing good. So your mindset and how you approach your riding and training is so important. The first thing is a growth mindset. So you can have two mindsets. A fixed mindset is like, well, I have this horse and my horse has bad gaits and I'm not a very good rider, and it just is what it is. That's it. A growth mindset, on the other hand, is okay, this is the horse I have. This is the body I have. I'm going to try to be the best rider that I can be. I'm going to try to improve my horse's gaits. I'm going to work with the horse that I have and try to get better. So growth mindset is really important in dressage. Another one is consistency. If you want to get better, you have to be consistent about your riding. So you need to ride as much as possible. And also for the horse, horses are creatures of habit. So if they only get ridden like once or twice a month, that's not enough. It needs to be like, I ride my horses 5 days a week. So especially with a young or a green horse, 4 or 5 days a week is a must. If you have like a 20-year-old super trained horse, okay, you can get away with less. The other one is persistence and perseverance. Some of riding is just simply grit. Like, it's going to be hard. There's going to be a lot of sweat and tears, and you just have to do it. You have to get out there. You have to do it. And it's going to be hard. It's not easy. You know, if you want something that's easy, like, I don't know, take up knitting, but riding is hard and you're going to have to work at it. Then challenges and mistakes are an opportunity. So if you have a challenge with a horse or with riding or with your body or whatever, it's always an opportunity to overcome. Every horse that I train is an opportunity for me to learn to work with a new horse. Every student that I have is an opportunity. It's a challenge, but it's an opportunity. Also pride and enjoying the horse. It's so important that you have, what I've noticed with my students is that the more that they love and believe in their horse and have pride about their horse, the more they flourish together. So it's really about believing in yourself, believing in your horse, and that makes a huge difference. And total focus, get in the zone. So this is a hard one to do. How many of you guys ride with a headset when you take a lesson? I do, and I use a lot of times a headset with my students, and it's really interesting that when they have their earbuds on, it's way easier for them to get in the zone. Because what happens is when you have those earphones on, you can't hear everything else that's going around you. And so it really helps you and your horse stay focused and getting in the zone. The zone is like when nothing else around you matters, where you're so focused on your horse and your body and in the moment that you're not thinking about, you know, what you're going to make for dinner or the fight you had with your husband or the stress at work or, you know, what's going on in the bushes or what's my neighbor doing. You have to get in the zone. When I am competing, it's often that at the end of my ride, someone will say like, oh, did you see me watching your ride? And no, the answer is no. Like when I go down the center line, it's just like, I am so with my horse riding every stride. I'm not looking at the other arenas or looking at who's watching me, because I need to be 100% present and focused with my horse. So those are my mindset things. Okay, so this is my visualization, guided visualization for you guys. And I was talking earlier this week to the psychologist that I was telling you about, Amanda, and she said, well, you should do some kind of a guided visualization with your group. And I said to her, no, I can't do that. Like, that's so like out of my comfort zone and so voodoo and weird. So I thought of this, that I could give you guys this little poem, and I encourage you to write something that makes sense to you and your horse, and say it to yourself before you get on if you're having trouble. And I titled it A Promise to My Horse, because we're the leader to these amazing creatures, and we have to put our best foot forward for them. So the mindset that we bring to them is so important. And if our mindset isn't right, it's not fair to them. When you put your foot in that stirrup, you have to be the best person that you can be. So a promise to my horse. I promise to be present. I'm releasing my tension and stress and setting intention to have a productive and positive ride. I promise to be confident and clear, for I am your leader. I am strong and brave. When you are fearful, I will take care of you and keep us safe. I am the leader. I am a good rider. I have tools to direct your energy in any situation. I trust you, and you will submit to my direction. Today, I am grateful for the privilege to ride you. Today, I bring confidence, positive energy, and a growth mindset. Today, I call the shots, and you will willingly abide by my wishes. Thank you for giving me your trust. Thank you for releasing your body and mind to my direction. Thank you for looking to me as your confident leader. Thank you for being an honest and forgiving partner. So there it is for you guys. I'm going to stop my screen share. So that's just whenever I get on a horse, I kind of, especially if it's one that I'm nervous about or I'm a little fearful of, I psych myself up and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to put my foot in the stirrup and we're going to do this. And when you get on your horse, you have to have that mindset of like, I'm confident, I'm brave, we're doing this. And if you can't get yourself in that state, then, you know, you shouldn't get on your horse. You need to really have yourself in a good state before getting on your horse. So that is my spiel. Now, if any of you guys, I have time for a couple of questions. So if any of you guys have like a big challenge that you're dealing with, you can maybe put your hand up or put something in the comments, and I will call on you guys, and then we can do a few like little individual consults if any of you guys have a big thing. Okay, Lori has something. Let me unmute you. Hi, Lori.
Hi. Okay, so I have a new horse. I've only had him 8 months, and he's 18 hands, and he's a big boy. But
yeah.
And my other horse is like Mr. Super Confident. Not, you know, he's like just takes my hand and takes me wherever. I never have to think about it. My new horse is way more insecure, and so I've had to learn. I'm trying to figure out how to be a more confident rider for him, because when he gets scared, like I always say to him, like he said, forward is my friend, but I can't get him forward sometimes. And then he'll like start to back up and he kind of wants to rear and gets a little choppy feet. And sometimes that's related to his body being sore or his saddle not fitting. But sometimes he's just scared and he wants to turn and rear and run the other way. So I'm trying to figure out how to get him past the scary stuff without making him more scared, like without him spinning and running on the concrete at Rancho Murrieta in the rain. So I'm trying to work through that because I don't want, he's sweet and kind, but he's obviously very afraid. So I'm not quite sure how to deal with his insecurity in a confidence building way for him and for me. I'm getting better as I get to know him, but it's been a little rocky.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, so I mean, it's definitely part of it, like you say, he's new to you. And so it's part of it is just building that relationship over time, that the more you ride him, the better it's going to get. The other thing that I think is really important is that you like, so, okay, so you say his tendency when he's afraid is he gets stiff and he wants to rear and kind of go backwards. So when you're not in a tense situation, like on a normal ride when he's at home, you want to really work on getting him really honestly forward in a normal situation. And then also work on that bending, that like drifting the hindquarters, kind of the one rein stop, putting him in a little shoulder forward, because if you can keep him a little bent and yielding, then he can't just stop and run backwards or rear. So it's really getting like that access into the rib cage where you can put him in a little shoulder forward or yield him past a scary object. Like when he wants to just stop and back up, that you have that ability. And then certainly, like you say, you know, you need to go about things slowly and gradually so you don't overexpose it and get him and you where you're afraid.
Yeah. Thanks.
I hope that helps. Thank you. Okay, does anyone else have, oh, Kat's saying. Hello.
Hello. Hi.
Hi.
Hi. I would like to share my experience, what I had with my horse. And for the last 2 weeks, I'm very, very confident. And what has happened, there was a new horse at the yard, and she was pushy, running into people and all these things. So what I have started, I did a groundwork with her, which really helped. And the second thing what I did, I looked at an environment around myself. Other people were scared of her, they were, you know, crying, they would not ride her. So I have changed the people I was riding with. And next thing, I was being in my current experience. So I left all the past things behind me, and I have concentrated at this moment. Also, I was looking as to be a leader. So when I ride a horse, I'm concentrating on my groundwork and I'm not looking out for any scary things. So I'm not scared of some big cars going past the road or anything like that. And like people saying, you know, when you're scared, you can be singing, you know, when you're riding. And I thought, no, I'm going to leave the singing at home. I'll be the confident one. And also I was learning to teach the horse to cope with scary things. So doing the circle, engaging the hind leg, and doing the one rein stop. And it really, really, really helped me. I'm so happy about myself.
Good. That's awesome. So your horse is getting better then?
Really better, yeah. She was so different compared to other horses, you know. She actually pushed me to the floor twice. She was so disrespectful. And when I did the groundwork, on my previous horse, I used the dressage with, but she would not take it, and I have to use the feel and touch. So I have to change the strategy for her, and that really worked. And you know, she backs on her voice now. She would never ever back before that. Really, really happy.
Good. That's wonderful. I'm glad to hear it. It sounds like you're doing all the right things, you know, confidence and groundwork. And it's amazing how much, if they're bad mannered and pushy and not submissive on the ground, then that transfers over to riding. So if you can get that respect on the ground, it really helps.
Yeah.
So good. Where are you from?
England.
England. Hello.
I'm from Czech, but I'm in England.
Nice. Cool. Okay, who else wants to share an experience? You can either comment or raise your hand. I don't see. Do you see anyone, Joellen, that wants to? Oh, I see. Michaela. Hi, Michaela.
Hey, Amelia. I had, or not too long ago, I think it was late last year, I had a lesson with your mom, with Joellen. And she told me to smile while I was writing. Boy, you can't think of anything bad when you're smiling. It really, really, at first it felt kind of weird, but it really relaxed me. Really, really relaxed me.
Good. Yeah, that's a great tip. We all have like little things that we do to help us. Like I know my husband, when he gets nervous on a horse, he always starts singing like really loudly and kind of embarrassingly, but it helps, take your mind off of your fear. So thanks for sharing that.
Thank you.
Does anyone else have a tip that they want to share for helping you? Oh, Linda has something. Hi, Linda.
Hi, I have a question. What is the best the rider headset that I could buy that's not too expensive? I know when I'm in my barn and it has a metal roof and my trainer is trying to tell me what to do, I can't hear a word she's saying because of the rain. And I was just wondering if you could put a link or something to a headset I could purchase.
Okay, yeah, I like the C Coach is I'll try and link it, or maybe my mom can. There's a C Coach, and then there's also one from Europe called a Wiz. Maybe Michaela or Sylvia, I know they both have them. A Wiz system, and those are both much cheaper. The contacts are really expensive, but those are cheaper. I think they're like around $200 or $300, so they're more affordable.
Okay,
but that does really, really help. So thank you for that question.
Thanks.
Amelia, there's a number of comments about sound, like how do I help a horse who's afraid of sound issues?
Yeah, I saw that. So, and sound, I think sound is one of the hardest ones because when it's visual, like we can see it coming up. Like we know if the horse is afraid of the judge's booth, you can see it coming up, the horse sees it come up. What's tricky about a horse that sounds spooky is that the sounds are unpredictable. So you have no warning for the sounds coming. The more that your horse is generally in a relaxed and submissive state of mind with you, the less sound reactive they're going to be. So what I mean by that is the more you work on your basics and you get your horse really relaxed and you're really relaxed and they're on the aids and you can bend and turn, the more that reactivity to sound is going to go away just by general relaxation. There were also a lot of comments about ear bonnets, and basically I use these on my sound spooky horses sometimes. What they are is they're a bonnet, but they have padding over the ears so it muffles all the sounds. And these are actually legal to show in. You can't show with earplugs, but you can use sound bonnets. If you watch the international shows, a lot of those horses have the soundproofing ear bonnets on for when they go in those stadiums with the freestyles and everything like that. So it is a good tool if you have a horse that's like anxious and nervous and really sound spooky. I do recommend using those because they can just help take the edge off and help your horse to relax that little bit. My only caution is be careful because sometimes if they shake their head, like if they don't like the bonnet and they shake their head, the whole bridle can fall off. So make sure that you've got your bridle on tightly if you use those, because I've had that happen twice now. So that's my recommendation. Okay, does anyone else have question or comment? I don't see anyone. Oh, someone here, except I can't see your name. Hello, Galaxy Tab E.
Yeah, this is Alexa.
Hi. Oh yeah, I forgot. Sorry. Hi, Alexa.
Okay. It's my fault. I don't do techie stuff very well. Tips. I'm way more confident riding the horse than with being on the ground. The things seem to step on your feet quite easily. So do you have any tips on how I could be maybe more bold or confident with my horse being the leader on the ground?
Yeah. How old is your horse?
I have one 7, I have one 18, and one 14.
Oh, wow. So you have a whole spectrum of them.
Yes.
So it's interesting. Like, I think so. I asked how old they were because for me, when I break in a young horse, I do a lot of groundwork and getting them really respectful of me before I even get on them. And it's easiest to do it when they're young. The older they get and the more used to like running over you they are, the harder it is. So definitely starting it when they are super young is the most important. And then my husband's smiling at me from the window. So start them young, but then part of it is just you have to assert yourself. It's about pressure and release. So like if your horse is pushing into you, you need to like give them a tap and move them over. And then when they move out of your space, release the pressure. Sometimes if it's an older horse that's like really strong, sometimes I'll do it with a bridle because with the halter, sometimes they're just so used to pulling on it. They may be more respectful of the bit. If it's a younger horse, I always like to do the groundwork with a halter because I don't want to pull on their mouth. But if it's an older horse that's just learned to be really disrespectful of the halter, then I will do it first in the bit. So just stick with it. And they have to respect you. They have to, get out of your space. Also make sure like to always stay up by the shoulder and keep their head a little tipped towards you. Because if you end up by their hind end and they tip their head away from you, then that's when you're gonna get kicked and you don't wanna get kicked. So.
Amelia, there are a number of questions about when you're riding a horse and it's afraid of other horses or another horse does something, what kind of strategies do you have about a horse that's nervous about other horses?
Okay, so that's a good one, and that's a hard one to deal with. And a little bit, you have to think about where that comes from. And horses, because they're herd animals, their instinct is like if someone's going to come running at them or if another horse approaches them quickly, their instinct is that they should run away from that other horse. So it's not natural for them to be going like head on, face to face with another horse. So you have to consider that. And then my biggest suggestion in that situation, like we talked about, when you're riding, you're the leader and your job is to keep your horse safe. So if you know that your horse is afraid of other horses, stay off the rail so that you don't get stuck on the rail with another big horse coming right towards you. Stay off the rail so that you always have space to turn your horse away from the other horse. The other thing you can do is once the horse passes you and it frightens your horse, turn behind the horse and kind of chase after the horse so that you kind of get your horse the idea like, hey, I could chase after the horse and make it run away from me. That's going to help to build your horse's confidence. But basically just try to stay out of the way of the other horses. And then, like I said, it's all about breaking it down little by little, get to where you can go a little closer to the other horses. And my other recommendation is at a show isn't the greatest place to work on it because everyone's very focused on themselves. If you go into a warm-up arena and you say, hey, everyone, just so you know, my horse is afraid of other horses, so stay away from me. Like, no one's going to listen to you because they're all focused on themselves and getting ready for their show. So work on it at home and get a friend with like a calm horse to just work on like riding next to them, or that they can approach you going slowly, like start at the walk where they approach you head to head at the walk and then gradually build up the speed. But it's like everything, you know, taking baby steps and just not overexposing your horse, and you as a leader keeping your horse out of trouble. Very important. Does anyone else have anything they want to add? Any questions? I don't see anyone.
Sylvia's kind of raising her hand.
Mary has one. Hi, Mary.
Hi, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. So I know about the one rein stop. It makes me nervous to do that because my horse does the shoulder in or spins, and that's when I go out of the seat. So, so I'm kind of hesitant to use that, and I know I should probably push and make her go forward, get her mind occupied. But when I'm on the back of the horse, like everything exits my head. I'm like, oh my God, what am I supposed to do? So what do you do then?
Okay, so you're not alone. I mean, I think that happens to a lot of us. Like, we can sit here on our computer all day and talk about riding and staying calm, and then you get on your horse and everything goes badly. So with your specific situation and the one rein stop, if your horse is dropping the shoulder and not bending, then your horse isn't correctly submitting to your bending aids. So, and I understand why you wouldn't want to ask for the one rein stop if your horse isn't going to respond properly. So that's where you need to do things like groundwork. So you need to, if your horse is dropping the shoulder, they're not bending when you do your one rein stop. So you need to start working on that from the ground, like teaching the horse to bend the neck around and yield the hindquarters, so that you can get a curve, like an arc in their body, instead of them just dropping their shoulder and spinning around with you. If you have a horse that spins, it's because you can't control the bend in their body. So for you mentally, part of that is to, like, so you say, well, my horse won't bend, so I can't do a one rein stop. You need to break that down and say, okay, what can I do so that you have tools when you're on your horse's back to control them? Because part of, I think, why riders lose their brain when they're riding is they don't have any tools. So you need to say, okay, I'm going to teach my horse to bend and stay off of my inside leg. And I'm going to start that on the ground, and I'm going to get that good on the ground. And then I'm going to try to do it at the walk when my horse isn't afraid, and just taking these little baby steps to give yourself a tool in your toolbox, so that when your horse loses their brain and you lose your brain, you have something that you can do to work on that. So that would be my suggestion.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, Sylvia, do you have a question? Hi, Sylvia.
Hi. I just have a little question. Sometimes I feel like my horse is scared of something, and it helps to let the horse go and investigate whatever it is. But sometimes it's just kind of like I have to put my foot down and say, let's just knock it off. Do you have any tips on how to approach things like that?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, and it depends on the horse and on the situation. There are some horses that, you're right, like kind of, I would say, the more confident, curious horses, that sometimes if you let them go and approach an object and look at it and sniff it, then they are better off, and you can then, like you said, say, hey, go to work, shoulder 4, get past the object. Some horses, it's going to make them actually more afraid if you just let them go and sniff it, because there are some horses that then will start to obsess over the object and be like, oh my God, the chair, I'm so afraid, and they'll work themselves more and more up. So sometimes you're better off to kind of keep the horse bent to the inside and ride a little shoulder 4, or like leg yield them past the scary object. So it depends on the horse. There's definitely horses that you never want to fight with a horse if they're afraid of something. That's really important because fear for the horse is an instinct, and I don't believe that horses are ever like that they ever fake it. Like, I don't think a horse is ever like, oh, well, I'm just going to pretend to be afraid so that I don't have to work. So there is an element of letting them explore that and check it out. But then there's also an element of respect, and that your horse needs to be on your aids, so that when you say, okay, we're going to work shoulder 4, go past the scary object, they have to say, okay, you're my leader. I have confidence in you. If you say it's okay, I'll do it for you. Because in a show situation, right, you can't say, hey, sorry, judge, my horse needs to sniff the chair before we can go by it. You have to go by the object. So, good question. What? We're not done. Okay. Does anyone else have a question? And then we will wrap things up. No one else. Okay, well, thank you all for coming today. That was a good discussion. I'm going to unmute you all. I'll post the recording of this on Patreon, and hopefully my mom, Joellen, was taking notes, so hopefully she got some notes. See everyone.
Hi, Amelia. Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you,
Amelia, thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Great day.
Bye.
Bye.